we don't have a criteria established, but now we're saying that we do, as long as it provides value to our citizens or recognized on the state level. Is that what I get?
No. You
Okay.
said that there was a pushback on it. There was not. I merely asked who these people were. I had no idea. I'd never heard of them before.
Okay.
And I want to know who they were. That was not a pushback.
I'm sorry, I thought you,
It
I'm
was
sorry.
clarification.
Okay, and I thought you didn't understand who they were because you approved the budget for us to be corporate members. So I thought you were familiar with the organization, so I apologize for you not understanding.
I was not familiar with it.
We discussed it at our budget meeting this year.
I don't remember that.
Okay, I apologize that you didn't remember. Okay, so that is why I want to establish a clear criteria. We already did, it's on record, that it is an organization that would provide services either locally or at the state level. I yield.
State level can be almost anybody. When I said a value, I meant within our community.
Okay.
If you guys want to take it to a state level, that's something totally different. It could be somebody, ABC, who has nothing to do with our community, but you guys still want
No.
to be able to give
I understand
a
that.
proclamation.
No, you're absolutely right, Doris. And when we became corporate members of this organization, it opened the door for future partnerships, and that is why we recognize them for Hispanic Heritage Month. And because of that, they will now be providing services directly within our community because we've opened the door to allow those services and resources trickle into our community to represent the 20% of the immigrants that we have in this city. But you're right, we should recognize at the local level. But
Local
sometimes
level.
it takes, you know, but we'll work on that. So we could strike the state level.
I have a motion and a second. All in favor? Opposed? Thank you.
Just to be clear, Mr. Mayor, the motion is passed, the resolution is drafted.
Correct.
As drafted.
As drafted. Discuss event planning ordinance.
I think having a committee, as we went back and forth and back and forth and back and forth till it got to be disgusting. Having a committee, we had our city attorney tell us what all the steps that would have to be done if we have a committee. Why can't we just have Melissa, you and I volunteered to sit on an event panel, if you want to put it. But having to have the meeting publicized in the newspaper, having it have to have minutes taken, having to have it as open to the public the way it is. Invite some citizens, but to go through all that and put extra work on everybody, it's too much. And, you know, I called Derek, as sick as I was, I called him and said, did anybody bother to read you what we would have to do to have a committee? And his response was, no. I said, let me just tell you, we're going to have to do this, 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 and this. And I also don't think that we, as a council, should have to vote on everything that our event coordinators do. That's why they get paid.
Well, I could see from your point why you wouldn't be concerned and why you take that approach. Your ideas and input are never met with opposition. However, for the last 3 years and continue to the present point, my input has always, most of the time, I would say majority of the time, it's met with opposition. And I'll give you one example. Let me just read a statement for you quickly. I feel having the event committee that we volunteered, I think it's important to include citizens, and I'm with you on that, Doris. However, when we don't have procedure in place, the wording, things will change and it will operate the way it's been operating for quite so long. And I'll give you an example of that. Well, before I go in there, I do believe I wanted to provoke, we discussed an ordinance in place giving the final approval from, not to micromanage our event coordinator. Let's also remind ourselves that she's not only an event coordinator, she's our HR director. She wears many hats. This would provide input from the council members. We are the first speed bump to getting the needs of our community heard. So they come to us as we are engaged in the community. Most of our city employees are in the building working on the day-to-day operations. My attempt is not to micromanage. It is not, it's to be inclusive of the ideas. For example, I'm a daughter of a veteran. My input for the Veterans Memorial was not taken. It was met with much opposition. It was less than 2 minutes to perform, to allow a solo performer, and it would cost the city $0. This woman has sang for us a patriotic song. Everybody that was witnessed it applauded her performance. But it seems that there's so many different examples that I can provide. But I feel if we have a procedure in place, a policy or an ordinance, we would alleviate the obstacles. Now, when we have received this packet started with my, we can discuss in November. There were 35 emails prior to that, but I'll start with the first one, as I was requested to be part of the meeting. Good afternoon. As agreed, several council members today met at City Hall for a scheduled meeting to discuss the finalization of the Veterans Memorial dedication. The following participants were present. We had our project manager, our city manager, our mayor, and our council member, Bob. The meeting commenced at 9 o'clock, and I'll skip some of that. During the discussion, I asked about including the solo performer in the program. The mayor expressed concern about time constraints and suggested we adhere strictly to Cliff's proposed schedule. I'm sorry, our city project manager. Our project manager was willing and thought it would also enhance the performance, the dedication. 3 council members said we can do a combination. Your input was met with no objection, no opposition. However, mine, for some reason, was met with opposition. I emphasized that the performance would take less than 2 minutes, and Cliff was okay with incorporating it at the end of the ceremony. While the city manager mentioned that solo performers are not typical for such ceremonies, no supporting evidence was provided. Unprofessional conduct and meeting disruption. At this point, the mayor abruptly slammed his fist on the table, yelling at me in response to comments I made during the 10/22 council meeting, which was last Tuesday, the Tuesday prior to the meeting. I asked him to lower his voice and engage professionally. After leaving the room without explanation and later returning, I attempted to refocus the meeting to the ceremony. Jody shared, our city manager shared a document related to the mayor's comments, my comments at the 10/22 meeting. But I reminded everyone that we could revisit that later so we could stay on track at the meeting for the meeting's agenda. Throughout the meeting, Councilman Bob made contradictory statements. While he claimed that the Staff and Planning Committee has decided against the solo performance, he also acknowledged that no formal policy exists regarding event procedures. I reminded him that the majority of the council supports having 2 performances, and the project manager raised no objections. Furthermore, it was concerning that some council members, including myself and others, were not including the planning process despite the suggestion to incorporate the solo performer, yet other council members' input was considered. I can continue reading a detailed summary of minutes. However, this is being brought to your attention because the biased practices have got to come to an end. Voices, we are a governing body. We are a team. I'm the daughter of a veteran. Why would my suggestion not be implemented? I believe other people's input was implemented. So if we had a committee and we were part of the committee, made it formal, I feel we would alleviate this and we would work in harmony moving forward. So I want to be able to work with the team without having these challenges every time that there is a suggestion or an input.
I believe having input is one thing, but being the final decision makers on it, no. That's why we have the staff.
Okay, well, as long as our input is recognized,
Okay.
I feel like I have a seat at the table, but my voice is suppressed for some reason. I don't know why.
Well, one of the reasons I think you
Suppressed.
think that is because of all the stuff that went back and forth with, I didn't know about the woman, you still haven't shared the
I got
email
receipts
thread
for
with
that,
me
too,
that I asked you to.
I got a few.
But anyways, I didn't know she was going to be singing at the dedication, or not the dedication, at the groundbreaking. until you said, oh, this lady's going to sing, and I had her sing over the phone to Cliff, and he liked her. Fine.
So
The woman did a great job, but didn't know anything about it till that day.
Doris, that's inaccurate. It's in your text messages. I explained that I was able to secure a solo performer for our groundbreaking. I said, Mayor, would you like, it was a whole thread, and you said, okay.
Is it in our city phone?
It is in our city phone.
Because I cannot find it.
I found it, and I
really
did
can't.
make a copy for you.
Will you please give me a copy?
Absolutely.
of it?
So that was something that, there was no objection. When I present an idea, I ask, hey, are there any objections? So it's not taking over anything. It's not grandstanding, coming up with ideas. It is, hey, do you guys like the idea? And you said, okay. But I will share it with you. I just have several text
because
messages and emails
I
printed here.
couldn't find it. That's why I asked you to please give me the
I got you
thread that
covered.
it's on.
Now, we would, I feel, be more efficient as a team if we address the gaps in our charter that does not reflect the policies and procedures. For years, this municipality has been operating in the absence of many important procedures, policies in place. And I think now's the time to see where we can bridge that, where we can fill those gaps so we can work harmoniously moving forward and meeting the needs of our citizens.
Well, right now, can we get back to the event planning part of it before we move on to many other ones?
I yield.
Okay, so event planning, I feel that having a committee is not as well as having a panel. The panel can get input from the other members. We can take it to the event coordinator, but it would be ultimately left up to the event coordinator and the city manager, not the final vote of the council. That to me is day-to-day operations. How many Christmas trees are we going to have? Who's going to be allowed to do this? Who's going to be allowed to do that?
And that's not what it is. I want to make sure that we are intentional of being inclusive to all the citizens in this city. There's a diverse population, and there are certain demographics that we are overlooking, and we need to be more intentional with taking that into consideration, that it's not only at one demographics here. We have diversified, and we need to consider making it an inclusive. Inclusivity is important, and we've missed the marker on that.
But a committee where you're going to have an open meeting, it's going to have to be here, there's going to have to be publicized in the paper, there's going to have to be minutes taken. That to me is really far out there.
If you have a solution of how our input, I have had input that continues to get shut down, and other councilmates have voiced their input and tried to share it, and theirs has been shut down. So how do you ensure that fairness and consistency is part of the process?
I think we all need to grow up, to be very honest with you,
Okay,
and just
so-
do our job.
So doing our job and growing up, in addition to that, independent of those two contributing factors, what else would you say would enhance the goal of being fair, consistent, and inclusive? How do we reach that goal?
Well, since you keep on saying that yours have been oversighted along with others, you have agreed to be on this panel, so you can bring all the input you want into it. I agreed to sit on it. I can bring the input from the other members of council, too. That should be good enough.
I think that's a good idea, but won't y'all just rotate, because maybe what if Tiffany want to sit on it one time, or Bob
How do we
wanna sit on it?
ensure that the input is being implemented?
Well, it's going to be given to, in the meeting, there's going to be minutes or whatever taken at the meeting, maybe not even minutes. Melissa did it at the last meeting. I could not attend to it, but she took them. Just a recap
So-
of what was all in there, and that would be the person who's in charge of the
Yeah,
event
like
to
if
do
you
the
wanna sit on
recap.
panel, or-
Project manager, Mr. Cliff McGrady, you are the sole, from what I understand from our last meeting, you are the one that orchestrates it, and if you can put it together, you would. So Doris, my council member, said, if it's in writing, then we'll ensure fairness and consistency. So is the solo performer included in the dedication, since it was in writing and I voiced my input? Was it accepted? Has it been approved? Jody, why hasn't it been approved?
No.
Oh, I'm sorry. Oh, I thought,
Well, I answered the question, I just want to know, can I elaborate, that's all. I said, and this project is different than the events. This is a project. And I said in that meeting, which I'll say again, I didn't ask any of you for input to avoid this. I had it laid out as a project manager. I was going to take it from beginning to end. I shared with the city manager on several occasions. I get suggestions from, but get direction from.
okay.
So, as of, to explain it, no, it was not added. But if this project was left alone, we wouldn't be having it. We'd almost be home by now.
Right. So the input from other council members, have they been implemented?
No.
Okay.
I've gotten, my last conversation with Jody Palmer, city manager, he told me to do it the way I was going to do it.
Okay. Thank you.
Can I say something?
Yeah.
I want to say, Cliff, you did an excellent job putting it together. It follows the ceremonial guidelines for a memorial service that the military follows, and I thank you for that.
The one you gave me is the exact one I was.
Exactly.
Thank you, Cliff. So, to circle back, input on paper does not get, it wasn't implemented. And that's the same thing for other events.
That's the ceremonial.
Mr. Mayor, if I may say something.
Yes, sir.
I've been listening closely. Just to bear in mind, under the council and manager form of government that the city has, input should always be listened to. Whether input gets implemented, absent an ordinance, is up to your city staff. You may have input that gets accepted, you may have input that does not get accepted. Nonetheless, it's the input of the city council and the folks that you've hired in order to run these things. They can follow it, or they can go in a different direction. But I think always the input should certainly be considered, and I believe it is considered, but I just want to be clear, input is not a mandate or an order, because that's the form of government that you all have.
And I'd like to ask one other thing, that conversation I had with the city manager, that every suggestion go to the city manager, and the city manager bring them to me. I am not supposed to, and I shouldn't get suggestions from individual council members or citizens. Should go to the city manager, because I report to him and I answer to him. And he and I, or he decides and we decide, and that's what's implemented.
Well, unless we have an inquiry, the charter states that we
I'm
can.
talking about a project.
Okay.
I'm talking about a project, like what I'm doing now.
Okay. Make sure we're clear. But I would like to say, and what Jason just said, I think that's the reason why an ordinance is what we should have rather than a committee or a panel, so that there can be clear guidelines as to what our responsibility is and how our input is handled. And my example would be for the DJ. Now, I've polled residents on my own. The city also did a polling on Facebook where we asked residents would they prefer the band, the DJ, or both. And overwhelmingly, the response was both. Now, I brought that information to the event coordinator during the meeting for Red, White, and Boom. That meeting was very contentious, but Dennis thankfully paid for the DJ. And here we are back again when we last meeting where we discussed the music for our next event, or not our next event, but for New Year's Eve. The event coordinator is back to the band and to the sound guys doing the music. The DJ has not been added a second time. Right, but they're not the same DJ MC that the residents are asking for.
They're the MC, and the sound company will pay the music in between the band sets.
Right.
I met with Dennis the other night, we went over the timeline. And based off of the eating contest and everything else we've going on, we don't have a whole lot of time in between fireworks and everything else to actually have anything other than the dentist promoting what's going on and the music playing and encouraging people to get up and do stuff.
Okay.
The band
But-
itself is going to be interacting also with the people that are coming to the event.
Okay. And I understand what you're saying, but, you know, again, I just feel like when Melissa says that our input goes unheard, to me, that was an example of us getting feedback from our residents, bringing it to the event coordinator, and it not being implemented.
Respectively, we have had live music and a DJ MC at every one of our events up until this last red light and boom. We had Randy Riggs with Stars and Stripes. That was phenomenal. He came out, he DJ'd, he MC'd. We had live music, he interacted and everything, and then he passed away right before Christmas. Because of that, we pivoted as best we could, and the sound company that we hired at New Year's Eve also was a DJ service, and not knowing anything beyond that, and they did phenomenal at the New Year's Eve playing music, even well after, while people were cleaning up and everything. We continued to decide to use them for the red light and boom. For the Christmas tree event, we're doing live music, but it's the individual school choirs and the church choirs that are going to be performing, and the toddlers and stuff. For the New Year's Eve concert, we wanted to bring something big to the city that would bring in a good following, and that's where we got the Bogey and the Viceroys and everything. It's an event that is limited from 8 o'clock to midnight with a state eating contest in there, with fireworks, 2 fireworks show and everything, and then a band that's going to be performing continuously throughout the whole evening to keep the crowd moving. If we need a DJ sitting in there, respectively, if we could, we're paying a sound company that already has advertised DJs. So that we're just not paying for an outside person to set up a separate booth outside of